was going to point the weapon right at Helena and Mr. Hutchins and Mr. Souza and do what he did.
Mr. Davenport, you are charged with first-degree murder.
Now, let's head over to Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court in Ohio. Here's the story of 24-year-old Robert Howes, who's facing charges of aggravated burglary and aggravated robbery, among others. On September 13th, Howes broke into a woman's home in Gate Mills, waving a gun at her. The brave woman managed to escape and locked herself in the bathroom, where she called 911 for help. The following day, former Cleveland NFL player Joe Juravicius had just finished dinner with his family when he noticed a light on in the barn behind his home. Upon investigating, Howes confronted him, pointing a gun at his head and forcing him to open a safe. To avoid leaving any fingerprints, Howes wore Juravicius's Super Bowl gloves. He made off with a gun, alcohol, and camera equipment, demanding cash as well. Luckily, the cops were able to track down Howes pretty easily. Why? Because he was wearing a GPS ankle monitor at the time of the crimes due to being on parole. Now, let's hear what Joe Juravicius had to say about the guy in court.
Clearly, he didn't learn his lesson and was not rehabilitated, and I'm requesting that he receive the maximum sentence allowed by law. Unfortunately, my grandmother told me a long time ago, if you have nothing nice to say about somebody, don't say it, in Your Honor. At this point, I have nothing good to say.
Howes probably thought he could pull this off without much consequence, maybe even hoping for a slap on the wrist. But he couldn't hide his frustration when the judge handed down a whopping 46-year sentence.
Bullshit, man. I'm here, man. Here, man.
A Las Vegas woman was sentenced to 26 years in jail for a high-speed DUI collision that took the life of an 8-year-old child and critically wounded his parents. The intoxicated driver, Alderette, was traveling at 103 kilometers per hour when she collided with the family's vehicle. Officials stated that toxicology testing revealed Alderette was under the influence of narcotics. According to the police report, Alderette showed slow reactions by only slowing down to 81 miles per hour for a red light that had been red for roughly 3 seconds. Throughout the hearing, Alderette cried loudly, at times shouting over the boy's relatives to say, "I'm very sorry." She apologized to the boy's family. "I'll always wish my life had been taken out on that fateful day," she said. Levi's family sobbed and supported each other throughout the hour-long sentencing session, wearing t-shirts that said, "For the love of Levi." At the same time, Alderette also started to cry. It seemed as if she was thinking about her life, which would be destroyed by the judge's sentence. The family urged the judge to set an example for the community in order to save other people's lives. They expressed that while forgiveness is important, they had made the decision not to forgive Alderette. "We choose to forget about her," Levi's grandma explained. Alderette will be 51 years old when she is eligible for parole. However, experts say that she could face up to 65 years in prison altogether. During her 90-minute sentence hearing, Alderette wept the entire time. "I'm really sorry for hurting the family," Alderette said. However, prosecutors argued that apologies were too late now. "We're done trying to teach you the wrong of your ways, and now you're going to be punished," said Eric Bauman, Chief Deputy District Attorney for Clark County. Joey, the victim's 12-year-old brother, told the district judge, "The nicest birthday gift my brother could get is this maximum punishment for Alderette." Alderette was sentenced to 26 years to life in prison without the possibility of release for second degree and 2 charges of DUI causing serious bodily damage. Levi's mother stated after the hearing that she was relieved that the judicial procedure was over. "We can put this aspect of it behind us and work on emotional healing as a family, knowing we received justice for Levi." In the next clip, the woman is in disagreement with the judge about appearing in court when she wasn't properly served. The judge is understandably irritated because there's no legitimate reason for her to be there, aside from seeking some form of revenge. To address the situation, the judge even imposes a fine on her to pay instead.
On what basis? There is no case before me, ma'am, other than the fact that you filed this frivolous motion, taking up this court's time for no good reason other than your own personal vendetta against this man for whatever reason you may have, and I really don't care because it does not involve me or my court. However, had I issued a PPO, you would have a basis to be before me. I did not issue a PPO. He did not pursue his right to a hearing on the PPO. You were never served, and here you are taking up my time so that you want me to chastise him and make him pay money? No, ma'am. Your relief is denied, and in addition to that, I am sanctioning you with costs of $500 forthwith to the county clerk's office.
In response, Karen claims she knew the situation was rigged. However, the judge isn't accepting any of her excuses.
I knew it was fixed.
I beg your pardon?
I knew it was fixed.
Miss Stevens, I highly suggest that you just exit my courtroom and go pay the sanctions before I find you in contempt.
The lady went on to pay her fine, hopefully realizing the importance of not wasting anyone else's time in the future. Hannah Gutierrez showed little emotion as the jury found her guilty of involuntary manslaughter in the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins.
Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Ma'am, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Helena Hutchins was tragically killed, and the film's director was injured when Alec Baldwin was practicing a cross-draw on the movie set. Gutierrez, in her role as the movie's armorer, loaded Baldwin's gun and mistakenly put a live round into his revolver. Defense attorney Jason Bowles argued that the jury should acquit his client because it was Alec Baldwin, not Gutierrez, who shot and killed Hutchins. Prosecutors played behind-the-scenes footage from Rust as evidence of how Gutierrez failed to follow safety protocols, allowing actors to handle weapons when they weren't filming. The footage revealed a live round in Baldwin's gun belt, one of 6 found on the movie set of Rust.
This case is about constant, never-ending safety failures that resulted in the death of a human being and nearly killed another.
That compelling evidence convinced jurors of Gutierrez's guilt, leading them to return their verdict in less than 3 hours.
Pretty much not checking the weapons, just handing them over and like, here, not checking. I mean, that was a big deal. I mean, you can't do that, and if you have live rounds there, and you don't even know it, and you're not checking them.
When Gutierrez is sentenced, she faces up to 18 months in jail. Her attorney vows to appeal the verdict. Meanwhile, Alec Baldwin is set to face a trial in July. Antonio Nathaniel Davenport Jr., also known as Lil Tony, and Derek Lamont Dixon Jr., also known as Smack, are facing murder charges in Durham, North Carolina. Both Lil Tony and Smack were members of the notorious 8 Trey Gangsters Crips gang. However, they weren't just typical street criminals. They were involved in various illegal activities, including shootings targeting rival gang members, drug trafficking, and bank fraud. Davenport even pursued a side gig as part of a rap group called the 83 Babies, named after the 8 Trey Gangster Crips. However, their music glorified the gang lifestyle, guns, and drugs. The situation escalated when rival gang members attacked Davenport at a mall and shared a video of the assault on social media.
Take his chain, take his chain! Take his chain! Come on.
Davenport and Dixon, along with their gang associates, including Duval Niji Magwood, also known as Paco, devised a plan to retaliate against their rivals. On the tragic day, they drove to an area frequented by their rivals, armed with guns. Zion Person, a 9-year-old boy, innocently sat in his aunt's car with 4 other children on their way to get snow cones. However, Davenport, Dixon, and Magwood mistakenly identified their car as belonging to a rival gang member, specifically the person Davenport had threatened on Instagram the day before. Without hesitation, they opened fire on the car, unleashing a hailstorm of bullets. Tragically, the gunfire struck Zion in the head, claiming his life and injuring his 8-year-old cousin.
A little bit more than 3 years ago, that 9-year-old Zion Person was near this
The authorities had their eyes on Davenport quite literally because he was wearing a court-ordered ankle monitor due to pending domestic violence charges. The evidence against him was overwhelming, including location data placing him at the murder scene, surveillance footage capturing his car tailing the victim's vehicle, and even a handgun linked to the crime.
Mr. Davenport, you are charged with first degree of Zion person on August 18, 2019, felony conspiracy to commit that.
As if their crimes weren't terrible enough, the courtroom reactions may shock you. During the trial, Dixon pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit racketeering and murder. Davenport, on the other hand, was found guilty of murder and discharging a firearm during a violent crime. Both were sentenced to life imprisonment. Throughout the proceedings, they showed no signs of remorse. For many, the sentences served justice for their actions. In a Pike County, Mississippi courtroom, 27-year-old Sidney Newsom attends an arraignment hearing for a domestic violence charge before Judge Aubrey Rise. He's already serving a 50-day sentence for contempt of court.
The court orders you to do something, you don't do it, that's contempt of court.
And that's an indication that you're dealing with someone who does not respect the judge or the judicial process.
In the midst of this arraignment hearing, the defendant starts arguing with the judge. There's only one bailiff in the courtroom right now, and it's Brianna Perryman. And she attempts to lead the defendant back to the defendant's table, away from the judge.
What I'm surprised is that there's only one officer in this courtroom at the time, knowing there are 3 other defendants in the courtroom. They could easily overtake one person.
Finally, Newsom breaks away from her, and he's now throwing papers at the judge. He is trying to physically get to this judge. To do what? Nobody knows, but I guarantee you it ain't good.
Newsom's mother becomes visibly upset about the whole thing as it starts to unfold, and Newsom's brother, Willie Thomas, wraps his arms around her waist and starts to pull her back toward him.
Chaos begins to spread throughout the court. Newsom throws a phone, he knocks over a computer.
Judge Rhymes leaves the bench, goes after the defendant to help his bailiff, and pins the defendant to the table.
It's not often you see a judge get up from behind a bench to take somebody into custody.
All of a sudden, while this craziness is playing out, Willie Thomas, the brother, joins the judge in helping to control the defendant, his brother.
He appears to be trying to calm him down.
However, when 3 additional bailiffs storm onto the scene, they have no idea who started the fight and view Willie as a possible agitator.
In control of Newsom, they approach Willie Thomas and they take him down.
Judge Rise sentences the defendant's brother, Willie Thomas, to 32 days for contempt of court for his interference that day. However, his sentence is suspended after 5 days.
Absolutely shocking to me that Willie Thomas was charged with contempt of court. If you look at the video, it's clear that the brother is actually trying to help subdue the defendant. He's not trying to help him escape. In truth, he shouldn't have spent a single day in jail at all.
Deputy Brianna Perryman files simple assault charges against Sidney Newsom, but they're later dropped.
I am absolutely surprised by the prosecutor's decision because Newsom was clearly out of control.
Newsom is found guilty of domestic assault in connection with his original crime. He receives a suspended 6-month jail sentence and 6 months probation and is ordered to receive drug and alcohol counseling. Additionally, he is instructed to stay away from his victim. His actions have already prompted discussions about increased security at the Pike County Courthouse.
I say always err on the side of have more than what you need. You can always send deputies away if you don't need them, but I think it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
When a Karen attempts to quote legal text to a legally trained representative, problems may arise.
The poll book is completely off. Completely off.
Off by 30,000?
I'd say that poll book is off by over 100,000. That poll book, why don't you look at the registered voters on there? How many registered voters are on there? Do you even know the answer to that?
No, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of this here.
Zero. There's 0.
So, my question then is if the
guess how many? Wait, what about the turnout rate? 120%.
Let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, please.
So the poll book number. There's 2 things that could happen here. Either the poll book number, if ballots were counted multiple times, there's 2 options. option number 1 is that the poll book numbers are not going to match.
They don't.
The actual. Not by thousands and thousands of votes. That's not what we see right now.
Take a look again. Take a look again.
Option number 2 is that they essentially were filling in names of people who didn't vote.
Dead people too?
So is that?
Let's
I guess,
let
is that
Representative Johnson ask his question, and then when
I
he's
thought that
done,
was his answer. Okay.
Well, I guess that's my question here is why we're not seeing the poll book off by 30,000 votes. That's not the case.
What did you guys do? Take it and do something crazy to it?
I'm just saying the numbers are not off by 30,000 votes. So
I know what I
saying
saw.
That they're filling in?
I know what I saw, and I signed something saying that if I'm wrong, I can go to prison. Okay. Did you?
Okay,
I'm just trying to ask you a legitimate question here.
Yeah, let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, and then don't interrupt him, and then if you want to respond to it, that's fine. And did you have more, Representative?
Yeah, I guess I just want to keep following back up with the poll book. So are we saying that the poll book is either wildly off or that they are filling in names?
It's wildly off, and dead people voted, and illegals voted.
Okay.
So that's my.
In 2018, Tanner Dashner drove drunk, causing a catastrophic disaster that resulted in the deaths of 5 people. Dashner, who was 21 at the time, was speeding at an estimated 97 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone on South 25th Street on November 23, 2018. His SUV collided with the rear of a Dodge Dakota at Midway Row. As a result of his actions, Dashner was sentenced to more than 70 years in prison. The Dodge, driven by Cadan Tillett, 27, of Fort Pierce, and the BMW in front of it had stopped at the red light on Midway Road. When the light turned green, the Dodge and BMW started to accelerate. However, Dashner didn't slow down and collided with the Dodge, which then crashed into the BMW. According to reports, the impact was so severe that the Dodge's petrol tank was compromised and erupted into a fire. The senior circuit judge, noting the extraordinary nature of the situation, explained that while he typically doesn't elaborate on sentences, this case warranted an explanation. He emphasized that it was about the judgment of choices made that night and the consequences of those decisions. The judge highlighted that one of the outcomes was the loss of 5 lives, transforming one person's life forever. According to Florida Highway Patrol investigators, Dashner, now 24, had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.274%, which is more than triple the legal limit of 0.08%. As a result, Dashner was sentenced to 14.5 years in prison for each of the 5 offenses. These sentences will run consecutively, totaling 72.5 years. However, Dashner was given credit for time served on 2 minor offenses. Dashner apologized to the families of the 5 victims in court, addressing the court. He said, "I never wanted to hurt anyone in my life. I regret the stupid judgments I made and apologize to all the families I've damaged as a result of this tragic disaster." Dashner was left shocked at the sentence. However, that didn't stop him from apologizing. Dashner begged forgiveness and expressed remorse for causing emotional and bodily suffering. He said, "I'm sad you'll never be able to tell your son I love you," and hear him respond, "I'm sad you won't be able to embrace him again." Dashner said, "I hope you can recover from this and have a happy and prosperous life." Dashner looked disappointed in himself as the victims' families started to cry. Back in 2018, there was a really tragic accident involving a woman from Santee. She was driving drunk and ended up on the wrong side of the road, which led to the death of a man. As a result, she was sentenced to nearly 12 years in prison. This all happened on February 26, 2018, when Freeman was driving near the junction of Interstate 8 and Interstate 5. According to an agreement she made with the court, her blood alcohol level was at 0.28 at the time of the crash. When the accident happened, Freeman was just 22 years old. She and another woman were in a blue Toyota Camry when it collided with a Volkswagen Jetta around 2 a.m. Sadly, Justin Callahan, who was 35, and in the Jetta, didn't survive his injuries. The California Highway Patrol officers reported that he passed away a few hours after the crash. Both Freeman and her passenger also suffered serious injuries. Months later, Freeman admitted that she was responsible for the accident. She expressed deep remorse, saying, "My lapse in judgment took Justin, the guy you all adore, and I'll never be able to apologize enough for my actions that night." During her court appearance on Friday, she added, "I wish I could undo everything. I'm truly sorry to everyone." During Freeman's sentencing, Justin Callahan's parents were there. His mother, America Callahan, spoke emotionally, saying, "I don't find much peace, joy, or laughter anymore. And when I do laugh, I feel guilty because he's not here." She told the court that although she forgives Freeman, the ultimate judge is God. When Freeman heard this, her face reddened, and tears began to flow uncontrollably. Through her sobs, she tried to speak, saying, "I hope you'll forgive me someday and understand just how truly sorry I am." Freeman ended up pleading guilty to several charges. Initially, she was charged with murder, but that charge was dropped as part of a plea deal. She was then handed an 11-year, 8-month jail term. Before the sentencing, she had already spent 379 days behind bars. However, not everyone was satisfied with the plea deal. Justin Callahan's father, Lowell Callahan, expressed his discontent, saying, "I'm not happy with the plea deal. I think she should have received a longer sentence since she took someone's life." Freeman's father also spoke up on Friday, describing Ashley as a good person who made a terrible mistake. Our final case centers on a 33-year-old man named David Russell Holbrook Jr. On January 6, 2006, in Crestview, Okaloosa County, Florida, he was accused of taking the life of a woman named Melissa Howard. The case remained unsolved for a decade, but investigators continued examining the events. Finally, they succeeded in arresting David in Alabama. During the trial, the prosecutor outlined the events unfolding, revealing that the incident had a surprising twist.
He was about 11 years old at the time. Primary custody was with Brian Howard, and Melissa Howard was seeking to have primary custody with her. You will hear that Melissa was dating a man named Christopher Cadenhead. He worked for UPS, and he would spend a lot of time with Melissa Howard, especially on his breaks. You will also learn that he was married at the time that he was dating Melissa Howard. He will admit that to you. You will hear from him. You will hear from his wife. That is no secret that he was having an affair with Melissa Howard. You will hear that Brian Howard was friends with the Holbrook brothers, David Russell Holbrook and Michael Holbrook. The defendant, David Russell Holbrook, you will learn, goes by Russell. And he and Michael were friends with Brian Howard. Now, where the testimony will start today is on January 6th of 2006. That was a Friday night, and Melissa and her son Taylor were at Melissa's house. You will hear that they were playing games, and then Christopher Cadenhead came over like he usually did in the evenings. And soon after he arrived, Melissa took Taylor to meet Brian Howard at the Azteca Mexican restaurant. Chris Cadenhead stayed at Melissa's house during that time, and Melissa then returned to her house to spend some time with Mr. Cadenhead before he had to get back to his UPS duties. The dinner that was at Azteca with Brian Howard was in honor of his girlfriend's son, Tyler Schultz. Tyler was about to be going back into the military, and so it was a farewell type of dinner for Mr. Schultz. There were a lot of people at that dinner. Brian Howard, Taylor Howard, Brian's girlfriend Karina, her son Tyler, his friends, Brian Howard's sister and brother-in-law, a very large gathering at Azteca. At the end of that dinner, Brian Howard, Karina, his girlfriend, Taylor, Tyler's friends, all went back to Brian Howard's house, where they stayed for the rest of the night. Also on that Friday night, a birthday party was occurring at David Russell Holbrook's house. That birthday celebration was for his girlfriend's daughter. His brother Michael was there, along with various members of their family and his girlfriend's family. You will hear testimony that Russell and Michael left the party to take Russell's children home to their mother's house, and they dropped the kids off around 9 o'clock. You'll also hear that Russell and his girlfriend Gina spoke by phone at 9:29 p.m. that night. And then you will see Walmart surveillance that shows that the Holbrook brothers went to Walmart at about 9:37 p.m. I need to warn you, these videos are from 2006. They are not good quality. It is the best that we have. You'll have a chance to view it. You'll be able to tell it looks like it was on a VCR and then converted to digital. But you can see timestamps and you can see when the Holbrook brothers were at Walmart. The question is, what was Russell Holbrook doing between dropping his kids off at their mom's house and talking to his girlfriend at 9:29 and going to Walmart at 9:37? You will hear also today that Melissa's daughter Carrie had been on a date with her boyfriend, Daniel Bretthauer. Carrie and Daniel arrived home right at 11 o'clock, back to Carrie's home, but the front door was locked. You'll hear that was highly unusual. Melissa Howard always waited up for her kids when they were out. When Carrie arrived home, she couldn't get in. She tried calling her mom. No answer. You will hear that Chris Cadenhead arrived and had also been trying to reach Melissa Howard. He had spoken with her on the phone after leaving her house earlier that night, and he was on his way to go to a hunting camp with his father-in-law that evening, but he was going to stop by Crestview on the way to see Melissa. Fair. So on the way to meet his father-in-law, he planned to stop by Melissa's house, but he couldn't reach her. He arrived to find Carrie and Daniel on the front porch, unable to get in. So the decision was ultimately made to try to jimmy the lock open, and Daniel was able to do that with a card. The deadbolt was not locked. He was able to go inside.
The defendant presented the evidence in a clear and measured manner. However, his body language raised some doubts.
The contamination occurred on the most important piece of evidence in this trial. You're going to hear B20E. You're going to hear. And you're going to hear lots of it. Now, we are going to present Candy Zulegger. She's our expert. She has years of experience. She's a former FDLE lab analyst. Okay, she's worked at FDLE before, and until recently, she owned her own lab. She's testified and assisted in numerous cases around the country and even internationally. Candy Zulegger is going to explain that the DNA found on that was tested by the FDLE analyst could be touch DNA. And she's going to explain to you what that is. That when Russell was, as the state has already admitted, when Russell was at her house 2 days prior, that his DNA, touch DNA, could have been left there. He could have sat on the couch, and he could have left some DNA there, or any other ways could have been left there. And Melissa Howard could have sat down on the same couch, and I think the evidence is going to show that that's a possibility that could have occurred. She's also going to explain that the DNA is not a match of Russell. That's what our expert's going to say. It's not a match. So you're going to hear from two experts. One's going to claim it's a match. The other one's going to claim it's not a match. So it's not quite as clear and dried as the state would have you to believe. She's going to explain that Russell, and I stress, only could be a possible contributor. Only could be a possible contributor. That's very interesting that you need to listen to her testimony about. She is going to explain that there are a lot of other possible profiles, meaning people that could leave the same DNA and it not be Russell Holbrook. I ask, and I know that you will. Y'all have been very attentive in jury selection. One of the most attentive voir dires I ever attended. I know that you're going to listen carefully to what these witnesses say. Now, the next thing is motive. For 13 years, Crestview Police, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, investigators from the State Attorney's Office were all unable to produce a motive for Russell to commit this crime. 13 years. Couldn't produce one. No motive. Absolutely no motive. But yet, you may or may not hear from Miss Gina Baker from the state that she might have given a statement 30 days before this trial. 30 days before the trial. You might be given a statement. Something that she just had to talk about. Opportunity. The state briefly touched about that. Briefly touched about opportunity. Imagine, if you will, trying to select your whereabouts from events that happened 13 years ago and piece together what you were doing for 1 hour on a day 13 years ago. How difficult that must be. As challenging as that is, to figure out what somebody was doing one night, 1 hour, 13 years ago, I believe that we're going to be able to do that. The state has already admitted that they believe there's going to be testimony that shows that Russell was at a birthday party, and there's going to be witnesses that he was there at the birthday party, including his daughter Danielle, his brother Michael, Michael's girlfriend Melissa Soule, and others were all at this birthday party. And that sometime around 8:45, that he had to start rounding up people to go bring Danielle and Brian back to their house, Darlene Cooper's house. And that the instructions had been, and the states even in their own opening agreed that he was supposed to be roughly there around 9 o'clock.
The prosecutor skillfully untangled the complex web of the gruesome incident, revealing chilling details that captivated everyone's attention.
Carrie lived with her mom here in Crestview. Melissa Howard was dating a man. Before that, Carrie was dating Daniel Brett Howard. If you recall him, he was the taller gentleman. He was with Carrie that night. Melissa Howard was dating Christopher Cadenhead. I told you in opening, and he admitted on the stand in front of everyone that he was married and was having an affair with Melissa Howard. His wife is Sherry Cadenhead. You heard from her. She had to acknowledge the situation. I'm sure it wasn't comfortable. We've aired that out. Janice Burke is Melissa Howard's custody attorney. I believe you recall her testimony about the phone call that happened between the two of them. Brian Howard has an additional daughter named Skylar. And at the time of this case, he was dating Karina Schultz, who later became Karina Howard. She has a son named Tyler Schultz, and it was Mr. Schultz who the Azteca party was in honor of. He was about to be deployed, so they were having the going away dinner that night. Brian Howard's sister is Bobby Davis. She is married to Robbie Davis, who you heard from. He's the one we'll get to in a little while about the text messages between him and the defendant. Russell Holbrook is the defendant in this case. He is a friend of Brian Howard's. We will discuss that further in a few moments. And Russell Holbrook has a brother named Michael Holbrook. Michael Holbrook has a wife named Melissa Sully. You heard from her yesterday when the defense called her. And she also testified that Michael Holbrook has worked for Brian Howard. Allison Holbrook is Russell Holbrook's ex-wife. They were split at the time of this case. Allison Holbrook was living with Brian and Karina Howard at the time this case occurred. Gina Good was Russell's girlfriend at the time. Darlene Cooper was another ex-wife. And the defendant and Darlene Cooper have two kids in common, Danielle Glassberg and Ryan Holbrook. Now, since we have refreshed ourselves on who everyone is, I'm going to start going through the actual evidence in the case. You remember Christopher Caden had arrived at Melissa's house that Friday at about 6:10 p.m. He testified that Melissa went to drop Taylor off about 6:25 or 6:30 that evening, and that Chris was at the house slightly less than an hour. He stayed home, at Melissa's home, watching TV while she was gone, and then she came back. So, let's check out. Does his story make sense? State's Exhibit 22 are UPS records. Mr. Cadenhead drives a UPS truck. UPS keeps track of every single delivery that someone makes. At the bottom of this particular page, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen are dates and times. On the right side of the screen, you see addresses. He was in Crestview on the evening of January 6, 2006. And you can see that his final delivery was at 6:11 p.m. It matches. He was where he said he was. Mr. Cadenhead drove his UPS truck once his lunch break or dinner break was over, and he drove it back to Fort Walton Beach. He said he arrived about 7:50 p.m., and then about 8:05 p.m. he rode around in a friend's new car. They test drove it, just showing the new car. And he testified that he arrived home about 9 o'clock or 9:15. Well, let's check it out. Let's look at his payroll records. We can see that he finished his work at 7:57 p.m. that evening. It matches. It's what he said. He also testified that he had a phone call with Melissa Howard on his way home. Well, let's look at his phone records. You have those in evidence. State's Exhibit 45 are Verizon records for Christopher Cadenhead. You also have Melissa Howard's cell phone records and evidence. Her phone number, 902-2163, is in evidence. And you can see here that we have phone calls at 8:27 p.m. and 8:41 p.m. You see the 420, the laser pointer does not work on the screen. 420-1444 is Christopher Cadenhead, and the 902 number is Melissa Howard. We see they talked for 686 seconds, that's about 11 and a half minutes. 662 seconds, about 11 minutes. They talked back to back in those two phone calls. Sherry Cadenhead testified, and she said, yes, my husband did come home around 9-ish, 9:15-ish. I think those were her words. She wasn't positive, but it was somewhere in there. It corroborates what Christopher Cadenhead said. He testified that he took a shower, he got his hunting gear ready, and he played with his 3-year-old daughter. Again, that was confirmed by Sherry Cadenhead. He said that he had started to leave, but he forgot something, so he called his wife to bring it to him. She confirmed that, and if you go back to the same phone records, you will see that their phone number, their home phone number, 678-4844, is in his phone records at 10:18 p.m.
The prosecutor also highlighted the timeline for Holbrook, revealing many intriguing details that emerged during that period.
Karina Howard testified that she was with Brian Howard the entire night, with the exception of a 5-minute trip to a gas station so that one of Tyler's friends could follow her back to the house. He hadn't been there, didn't know how to get there, so she left the house, never even stopped at the gas station. She testified she circled around and came back. But what about the smoke breaks? Did Brian Howard take smoke breaks while he was at Azteca? When he slipped away and murdered Melissa Howard? You heard Karina Howard. She said, I smoked too. I was with him. Her testimony was very credible. She was with him the entire night, except for those 5 minutes. Visual representation, about 6:30 p.m., Melissa Howard took Taylor to Brian Howard. Sometime after 7 p.m., the party moved from La Bambas to Azteca. In the vicinity of 9 p.m., the party dispersed. Allison took Taylor to Brian's house. Brian and Karina took Skylar to a friend's house, and then Brian and Karina Howard went home. 10 o'clock-ish, Tyler, Nicole, and Jared arrived at Brian's house. Let's talk about Russell Holbrook and Brian Howard. In his own words, they have been friends since 1996 or 1997. He's even stated that he's known Brian Howard longer than Michael Holbrook has, because Michael Holbrook lived elsewhere and then moved up here. So their friendship has been going on for a very long time. Russell Holbrook invited Brian and Taylor Howard to come see his new truck. Taylor told you that he knew what truck Russell drove because Russell had invited him to come over and look at it, because Russell Holbrook and Brian Howard are friends. Russell Holbrook said that he had talked to Brian about Allison, but he didn't get enough details, so he wanted some more. So he clearly thinks that Brian Howard is a close enough friend to be asking, hey, can you give me details on my ex-wife? Harry Winkler testified that Melissa Howard considered Russell Holbrook to be part of Brian Howard's circle. She also testified that Melissa was afraid of anyone in Brian Howard's circle, and Russell Holbrook was not allowed at the house. As I mentioned at the beginning, Russell's brother, Michael, also worked for Brian Howard. We know there was a custody battle going on at this time for Taylor Howard. You heard from Janice Burke that Melissa Howard was successful in petitioning the court for primary custody of Taylor. She was slated to get full custody on January 6, 2006, the same day that she was killed. 2 days earlier, she had a visitor.
You ever been to Melissa's house? Yes. I got by one time when Rob and them were over there. I think that was it. Just once or twice. How long ago was that? Like, days, months, a year, couple of years ago. And where was that? What house was that? The one over behind, that Jackson Guard, whatever that road is. When was the last time you actually saw Melissa? I don't know, it's been a while. Just try to give you a time frame. It's been a couple of years since her and Brian were back to their divorce. So that's when you actually physically saw Melissa was a couple of years ago. Yeah, I didn't think that. That's been a while. I don't remember. It's been a long time. Okay. So Melissa's ex, the emergency,
The details of the homicide were laid bare, exposing the nature of the crime with stark clarity.
They can't prove that you were there with me. The only thing that they can prove is that you were with me at Walmart. That's the only thing they can prove. Those are not the words of an innocent man. Ladies and gentlemen, we can prove more than that. It's what he's afraid that we can prove. Shows you guilty. Why else would they be discussing? They can't prove you were there. Only that you were with me at Walmart. That's all they can prove. Ladies and gentlemen, there have been a lot of statements by the defendant that were later revealed to be false. As the judge has explained to you, there are three elements for the state to prove first-degree premeditated murder. One is that Melissa Howard is dead. That is obvious from the evidence. Number two, the death was caused by the criminal act of David Russell Holbrook, and there was a premeditated of Melissa Howard. Now, the judge has told you that the premeditation is after consciously deciding to do so. So at the moment that you're doing the killing, you have to have the intent to kill. There is no exact period of time. It does not have to be weeks and months of planning. It can be in an instant, so long as there was enough time to allow reflection by the defendant. Now, the judge will also, or has also, talked to you about lesser crimes. You only get to those if you decide the main accusation has not been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. There are two lesser crimes in this case: second-degree murder and manslaughter. For second-degree murder, the state has to prove that Melissa Howard is dead. The death was caused by the criminal act of David Russell Holbrook, and that there was an unlawful killing of Melissa Howard by an act imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. in second-degree murder, premeditation is not required. Is the defendant guilty of second-degree murder? Yes, he is. This is a lesser crime, though. That is not all he is guilty of. Did he kill Melissa Howard? Yes. Was it unlawful? Yes. Was it by an act imminently dangerous to another? Absolutely. Did his actions demonstrate a depraved mind without regard for human life when he slit the throat of a 32-year-old woman and left her to die in her own on the floor? Yes. He's guilty of second-degree murder, but that's not all he's guilty of. Here is missing the premeditation element. You know from the evidence in this case that this was intentional. This was fully formed, conscious intent to kill at the time of. The judge read the definition of imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a depraved mind. Take into account, would a person of ordinary judgment know that this is reasonably certain to kill someone and it's done from ill will or hatred or spite or an evil intent and is of such a nature that the act itself indicates an indifference to human life? You know that's true. Evil intent is all over this case. You can see it by his actions. The other lesser included crime is manslaughter. There are two elements, that Melissa Howard is dead and that the defendant intentionally committed an act that cost her death. Is he guilty of manslaughter? Absolutely. But that's not all he's guilty of. He's also guilty of second-degree murder, and importantly, he's guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. Now, the judge also talked to you about principles. He told you that if the defendant helped another person or persons commit a crime, he's a principal. And he must be treated as if he had done all the other things the other people did if, number one, the defendant had a conscious intent that the criminal act be done, and two, that the defendant did something or said something that was intended to and which did incite, cause, encourage, assist, or advise the other person or persons to actually commit the crime. Ladies and gentlemen, there are views of the evidence in this case where you start to get an understanding there may have been more than one person. The evidence shows that Russell Holbrook murdered Melissa Howard. But if you find that he helped someone else commit it, he's a principal and he's just as guilty as them. The judge also told you that you could actually even be a principal and not be present when the crime was committed. Now, we know in this case he was present. His DNA is on her. But he wouldn't have to be. In weighing the evidence, there are certain considerations that you can take into account. And the judge read a list to you. There's a few I'd like to focus on. Did the witness seem to have an opportunity to see and know the things about which the witness testified? Well, Greg Grover, the private investigator for the defense, drove the routes that the defendant supposedly took that night. The defendant never said which way he went, and Mr. Grover clearly has no concept of Crestview or its traffic. He cannot say how long it took the defendant to drive this route in 2006. He's not aware of the number of traffic lights taking one route versus the other.
The jurors shared their perspectives, and the judge weighed in, reflecting their sentiments based on what they expressed.
Division 6, verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as to the offense charged in the indictment: guilty of first-degree premeditated murder as charged in the indictment. So say we all this 27th day of February 2019.
All right, thank you very much. Then we'll have a seat, please. Any requests?
I'd like to have the jury form.
All right, I'll handle that. What I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, I'll start on the bottom left and just refer to you by number. Juror number 1, is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict, ma'am? Sir, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Ma'am, is this your verdict? I'll start back to my left. Sir, is this your verdict?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and the consideration that you have given to this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by a court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We've recognized for hundreds of years that your deliberations as a jury, your discussions and your votes should remain your private affair and your business as long as you wish for that to be so. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations and certainly may do so, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, from the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. Now, this is the instruction that the Supreme Court of the state of Florida requires trial judges to give to jurors at the end of cases. And it is accurate and it's outstanding, but I don't think it's complete. And so I would like to add what I believe to be the overarching truth. Our system of justice cannot function without people who are willing to serve unselfishly in difficult circumstances to assist us as a country. I have heard and believe this to be true that save military service in a time of war or conflict, that jury service is the highest calling that a citizen of our country can have. And you have fulfilled that. I very much appreciate, we all appreciate your service. At this time, with the thanks of us all, you are excused. Now, as you are excused, if you might need assistance getting to your car, it's dark outside, it wasn't when you arrived, we have people here who would be happy to do so.
The proceedings carried an air of sophistication and elegance. Both the prosecutor and the judge conducted themselves with remarkable composure.
The court is prepared at this time to enter sentence consistent with the law of the state of Florida. The sentence is as follows. David Russell Holbrook will be sentenced to life in prison in the state of Florida Department of Corrections, with all mandatorily imposed fines and costs and credit for time served. Anything further? I will respectfully deny the motion. Anything further?
Your Honor, there is one daughter of the victim who would like to address the court.
That would be fine.
Even post-sentence, you don't have any discretion, but she would like to speak on behalf of the family.
That would be fine.
Christine Winkler?
That would be fine. Take him, if you'd be kind enough, just over by this wall. Miss Winkler, you certainly, and you can address from this podium if you would, please. Miss Winkler.
I'm, like you said, my name's Christy Winkler, the daughter of Melissa Howard, and I'm speaking on behalf of my sister, Carrie Winkler, and Taylor Howard. And I just want to thank everyone here for their time and the commitment for FDLE, the Crestview Police Department, the State Attorney's Office, for finally getting justice for us. As anyone can expect, this has just been an awful ordeal. We haven't been with our mother for 13 years while he gets to go free and be with his children and his grandchildren. And our mother missed so many stuff, all of our graduations, me becoming a nurse following in her footsteps, her first grandchild born in December, my upcoming wedding in August, and everything else that a mother should never have to miss, let alone the children ever have to go through, because someone has such disregard for human life. I just want to thank everyone again that has put so much time into finally getting answers for us. Even though it took a little bit of time, we just want to appreciate everyone for this.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Defendant will be taken into custody in stanter. Counsel, do you want to? That'll be fine. That'll be fine, Approach.
It's quite the sight when someone like Karen attempts to assert authority over a judge, thinking they can control the show. But what happens next is often a swift and firm reminder of who truly holds the power in the courtroom.
Ma'am, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I would like to call...
Ma'am, stop. I know you want to control this room, but this isn't Burger King. When the sign changes to Burger King, you can have it your way. Right now, this is my courtroom, and you will answer my questions. Stop. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury? Yes or no? Again, say anything again without telling me you're going to tell the truth, and I will hold you in contempt of court for 93 days.